Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Journey with Julie. I'm your host, Julie Long, and today I'm sitting virtually across from Ryan Anderson, a life coach here in Winnipeg who focuses on supporting his clients find the power within themselves to find the path in life that they truly want, as opposed to what others are doing around them. And some of the key points that you focus on with your clients is following their gut and using their mental strength to persevere when times get tough, and kind of leaning into the unknown and being okay with, well, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know my gut and I'm going to follow that, And so you've been helping people for over 10 years now. But I guess, like everybody else, shit happens, right? Like Forest Gump says, and you found your way to land where you are now. So I'm really pumped about this because you have some cool stories, and so, yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Julie. I appreciate
you're
it.
Welcome.
And thanks for listening to the stories and lots of ideas. Hopefully I can bring some value for yourself and for all your listeners.
Yes, I'm sure that will happen. So, I suppose, when we were chatting before we pressed record, we were talking about this central theme where a lot of times we get knocked down before we're kind of awakened to the reality of what is. And then that's when we kind of dig deep and figure out, okay, what do I really want? And how am I going to get there? And like everybody else, that's happened to you more than once, right?
Definitely.
So, yeah. I'm going to hand it over to you where you ever feel like starting.
Sure. Well, we'll get into some. First off, let me start a little bit about myself for my journey. How we were talking is there was really biggest changes in my life when you talked about following your gut. Was in my early 20s, and I was doing everything that I think I was supposed to do. Yes. That makes sense, or on track, and everything that society and everything wanted to do. And I was in a relationship, and I was going to school, and I was working, and somewhere along the way, if it wasn't the right fit, great. But it seemed like it was the first wake up call for me to just saying, like, what do I really want in life? And I started doing things a little bit differently. So I still remember clearly in that day. So at the time it was a blessing, but then, we always look at things as, why is this happening to me right now? Right. And looking back, you're just learning about, okay, these are lessons to be learned along the way. So at that time back then, I decided that, you know what? I'm going to do things differently than everyone else. If everyone goes in this direction, I'm going to go in this direction. And I started being involved in things that I wanted to be involved with. So some coaching, running my own business, some real estate stuff, and just focusing on me and other people. So I wasn't sure how that kind of looked, but it started from there. And I think the first step was just starting to reading and learning and being open to new things. And that sounds weird, but that's where it started. And it took a little bit to the gap between learning stuff to then applying it. Yes. There's everyone that knows things, but are you actually have the results or the experience in there? So I didn't have any of that. So I kind of focused on a little bit of what my strengths were at that time, which was I was really good at long distance running. And for some reason, this little gut in my inside me was like, well, what happens if you really kind of pushed your body and your limits to the max? You hired a trainer, you got into the best shape. And this was something that I needed to do at that time. And it wasn't for money. It wasn't for status. It wasn't for any bragging rights. No one else, but for me, if that makes sense.
It's like this voice in your head that just said, like, I need to do this.
Yes. And at the same time, I remember working at a job, which was great in the hospitality industry and a little bit of corporate, which I learned lots and met lots of great people, but there was always this fire inside of me that was like, it was burning. It started small and then it kept burning brighter and brighter, being like, there's more for you. There's more for you. And I couldn't calm it anymore. And
you couldn't shut up. I'm just trying to focus. And yes, that's scary to listen.
Appreciating for where you are right now, what you've learned, but then you're like, okay, there's something more for me out there. And I think having the courage to make kind of a jump or a leap to something next.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure what it looked like, but I was working. I was always a hard worker, was working hard, but it was like, was it in the right direction or where I wanted? So I remember the first craziest thing that I wanted to do was I said, well, I wanted to Terry Fox was a big fan of mine. I wanted to run and bike across Canada. I'd done some other marathons and different stuff and kind of pushed my body. And I'm like, if I could go that far, then I could do anything. That was my mentality. I remember telling my family at the dinner table, and people kind of not laughing, but just being like, well, how are you going to do this? And how are you going to do that? And all of the time, money, energy, and work stuff and everything. But yeah, I guess that was back in 2008, maybe. Mm-hmm. That's when I decided to join a gym and to get everything in focus and focus my life around that. For the next year and a half, I trained like a beast. And originally I was going to do a triathlon a day, because triathlons, I think, are the hardest things, because there's 3 sports to train for. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to be good at kind of everything, if you will. Yeah. So I was going to rollerblade. The first day I went out, so I drove out to Victoria, BC, and it was July 1st. There was a race starting on Canada Day, and I was like, this is the perfect start. It was a 10K race, and I just ran all the way through, and then I ran right through the finish line, and I kept going. I hopped on my bike, and then I went all the way to the ferry, and then that's kind of started the trip. And wow. I was going to kind of rollerblade, but I almost got killed on the first day or two. So I was like, okay, we're scrapping that. So we just kept it to running and biking. So every day I did about 10 kilometers running, and I did the majority of biking, about 180, 90K on the bike. So about 200 kilometers a day, which looking back now is pretty crazy.
It sure is. Like, I remember the first time I got back on a bike, like as an adult after riding as a kid, and it felt very foreign. And like, that's a long distance, Ryan.
Yeah.
Like some people just the 10K is an accomplishment, you know?
Yeah, I think, and so there's so many things that I learned from that experience. First of all, no one is able to really take, usually, I shouldn't say no one, but lots of people aren't able to take more than like a month away from their responsibilities, from their work, and your mind goes in a different place. Once you're kind of away from those distractions, then you actually get to like go deep into your mind of kind of things, what you want. And I felt like I was the observer, going from province to province, city to city. You're watching everyone else go through their lives, and rushing around and kind of just not being present. So some of those things were my first indications there. And then I met lots. Yeah.
Your first indications of what? Like being an observer and watching everybody rush around.
My first indications of like being aware, for sure. And then of all the people and the opportunities around you. So I'm like, everything is out there, but you think, but it's just the mental change inside your head, right? Mm-hmm. You're changing that. There's just the same opportunities are there all the time. So I was cruising along, met lots of different people. And I remember the story of meeting a gentleman kind of towards the end of my trip. I'm all the way into the Maritimes. And he pulled up on the side of the road to me, and he was just like, hey, how far are you coming? And people would wave and honk. And I said, oh, from Victoria. And he's like, wow, that's amazing. He's like, do you want to stop and get a drink up there? I just have a campsite. So the first thing I'm like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. But then afterwards, I'm like, okay, red flags. I don't know this person. They're just like, it's a campsite, what's going on? But I followed my gut instincts, and long story short, really helped me out at a time when I needed it. And he was a professor at a school, and it was my first, ended up being I kept in touch with them. It was my first speaking gig, was with them. So I got a chance to come back to this private school in Ontario, and it was awesome. It was amazing. Got a chance to talk to the kids and everything. So I finished it. I finished it in something like 40 days. And I cruised through, and it was amazing. That's just
unbelievable, Ryan. Like that's something you only see in movies, like.
Yeah, there's other people pushing it out there. And at the time, it was such a big thing. And now what we do to our accomplishments is we kind of downplay them, where I'm like, yeah, well, yes. Right. But yes, at the time, it was definitely a big thing for me, for sure. And I had been pent up to this goal of wanting to do something for so long. Mm-hmm. And then looking back on it afterwards, it was like, wow, this was like a combination of like identity of who yourself, willpower of saying no to other people when there was distractions and things coming up, sticking to a goal. Yeah. And it was a lot. And then, so moving forward, and then I came back from that, and I was super depressed. You have one big goal that you hit, and then you're like, hey, now what's next?
Exactly.
So, I didn't know what was next, and it was so demotivated, but it was a good thing. It was like, what's on to the next chapter? Yes. So doing things a little bit differently, I left that job that I was that it was time for me to go, if you will.
Yeah.
And I found something else. A buddy of mine was managing an apartment block. I said, okay, well, I can do what he did. And it ended up being kind of my focal point. So I was able to take care of the tenants that was in the building that I was at. And it gave me a chance to kind of reset my life and build my businesses up and go after what I wanted. So not your traditional style for sure, but finding a way to, if you can't increase your expenses then, or increase your income, then kind of lowering your expenses. So they all kind of tied together.
That's interesting. It's like, you ascended the mountain as you did that cross Canada. And then once it's done, it's like this big crash into a valley, right? And I like that is a very scary time to like have no idea what you're doing. But it's like, I love that you just embrace it. Like, okay, I need to figure out what I'm going to do. And I can't do what I'm doing now. So how do I set up my life so I can have the space to just figure out what it is that I want to do and align myself to climb the next mountain, right? And be comfortable with that, the discomfort of not knowing and not being aligned like everybody else is. And, like I remember when we were in that conversation previously to this recording, you had mentioned, like, how old were you at this time?
So that was right around, that was in my early 20s, but then cross Canada was right around 29 to 30. So I was just going to say, a lot of times we give ourselves timelines on things. And I was like, I need to have something accomplished by the time I'm 30. Well, looking back on it, you don't, but everyone just, everyone in themselves thinks that they do, because everyone's at different stages of their journey at different times, and it's fine. So I was behind on raising a family and going kind of that route and career, but I was ahead in other kind of physical and other areas. So everyone's journey is different, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that because I felt the same way. There was this panic around that 30-year mark where like I was living abroad. I wasn't married and getting ready to buy a house and have kids, which is, a lot of what society expectations place on you. And it takes a lot of courage to just put that to the side and focus in on yourself and like, what is it that I want? And then create the space to just hold the line, to make yourself like, to take one step and then another to make your way to where you want to be. And that's what you did. You hunkered down to create, like literally you hunkered down to create the environment to climb the next mountain, so to speak.
Yeah. I think we talked about this before, but so many people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they're going to do in 10 years. So at that time, believe it or not, I said, you know what, I'm going to do all these things right now for me. What are things are set up for, but I'm already looking ahead to the next 5 or 10 years. And that was something that I knew at that time. I'm going to be much happier in a place. I'm going to be patient. I guess that's the key. I'm going to be patient, and it's not if I'm going to succeed, it's when I'm going to succeed.
Right.
And then what kind of values and services can I offer to other people? So we all have our different traits and that. And I, more than anything, I said, okay, well, the mindset stuff is great. The visualization stuff is what's worked well for me. And we talked about before about that is I started using visualization in other areas, but it's so powerful. So I downloaded a picture of that lighthouse on the Cross Canada out east. And every day for like a year and a half, I looked at that lighthouse and I pictured not only what it looks like, but what it smells like and what it sounds like, and how am I going to view the world differently, and how are they going to view me differently? And that really works. So when things got tough and the person I was with, my support crew, kind of left me and had their own life to get back to, and I crashed on the ferry coming off with all these other cars and just lots of different things. I ditched my tent, my sleeping bag and all that. And for the last 2 weeks, I just made it on my own. So I went pretty hardcore at the end. But I finished it, and I proved to myself that, I can accomplish more than, we're more than capable than what we think, and just being able to accomplish so much more than what our potential is, and also not being able to see ahead. So I couldn't see to the next step. So the next step after that was the torch that came through for the Vancouver Olympics. And there was different things. Someone sent me a link saying, hey, this is right up your alley. So the question was, to qualify for carrying the torch, was what have you done athletically in Canada, and what have you done to motivate, the younger youth? So I had to write out kind of what I did and being able to go talk to the kids and being able to, and do the across Canada. So then I got a chance to carry the torch, and that was an amazing feeling. Yeah. It wasn't long, but it came into the city, and I still have it up there in the back.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was.
You touch you're in a big group of other people that are qualified on their own, and you're all wearing the outfits. And then you get a chance to touch the top, and then you're carrying this eternal flame. And it's a pretty cool feeling to be running and to have it. And then I was waving at the beginning, and then I was kind of like this. And then the guy was like, okay, let's pick it up. Who's the runners beside me? And I was like, all right, let's go. So then I kind of sped away, and I'm sure that they were running for a while. So that was great. And growing up, my parents took me to see the torch when it came through, the flame when it came through from the Calgary Olympics, so first thing in the morning. So I was like 10 years old. So this was like a dream come true, 20 years later. And it's pretty cool. We got up early in the morning, and at that time they just did it. It's just going, I think, 24 hours a day, or they had it set up because I remember early in the morning, and there was people there, but it was just different. And they were running like all the routes, where I think this time they were kind of taking their media spots and having everyone set up along the way. Anyways, right. It was amazing.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, so I was just happy to be a part of it. It was just one little part of the Olympics and part of that flame, that internal flame that connects us all. So there's a lot of politics around the Olympics not everyone agrees with, but the one thing I think people can agree with is that whole idea of the flame and the torch and bringing everybody together. Yes. And so that's what I loved.
Yes.
And then I got a chance to go talk to schools. So at one time when my grades weren't the best when I left, I'm like, well, what am I? And then getting invited to come back and talk to your junior high and your high school is a pretty cool feeling. So I started developing a little bit more of a speaking. I joined Toastmasters and said, okay, how do I become a better speaker? Which has been an adventure. And I'm still a part of the Winnipeg Toastmasters, and it's a great club. And then things just kind of evolved from there. And I was like, okay, now what's next? And kind of building my coaching business and how can I help other people? And the first step to coaching is that you don't have all the answers, but here's a few tools and guides that work along the way. Mm-hmm. And you start studying other people and then learning that there's no right or wrong way to do things, but there are certain things that are going to help your success and help your speed of it, if you will, how quickly you want to do it. So the first thing is breaking through and not caring what everyone else thinks. That's by hardest and the scariest. It takes courage to follow your heart for sure.
Yeah, that's one thing I feel like we've had in common, where I feel like there's this voice inside me, and then it just grows and grows and grows. And then you affirm it by saying it back to yourself. And then the idea crystallizes within you, and then you start speaking it. Yes. And then the more you speak it and maybe share it with others, it's like, well, now it's out there. Yes. And I can't not do it. Like I have to do it. And then you just start figuring out ways to make it happen. And like you've accomplished like that, like going across Canada, like that's amazing. And like that focus, when you're, doing presentations and speaking engagements, like what's the most common question that people ask you about, like how you did that?
I think it's such a big thing. It's a big one, but you realize it's just the day-to-day stuff, right? So everything is day-to-day. Everyone's got the same amount of time in the day. So what are you going to how are you going to chop it up, if you will?
Yeah.
And are you going to burn yourself out, or are you just going to focus on a couple things, or you say to no to a few things now and some stuff later, right? So that's the biggest thing, is how to have that bigger picture. So I think it excites me when, you start going back to the gym, and at first you can't go all the time. You're going to kill yourself, especially if you haven't been there. So it's just that slow progress of, okay, a couple times a week, and then a little bit more than that. And you're starting to see results in your life, and then it becomes a habit. You know, when habits become, it's not as sexy, but they become kind of the focal point that you need. And then also, we're always told what we can't do. Well, you need this newest device, or newest phone, or newest car, or whatever it is. And this is the marketing for all the companies around the world. But when we come down to the core people of what we have everything we need inside us. Just deciding on building on what we've already done, what we've already kind of accomplished. So you build yourself up, but not too high. Then you can get humbling experiences just to keep your ego in check.
Yes.
and pushing forward. So I think the biggest thing is, wow, how did you get to there? But that's the result of all these little kind of things along the way.
Yeah, well said. And, I remember in one of our conversations before, I think the central question was like, how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel today? And you said, what kind of experiences do I want to help you figure out what it is that you want? Like cutting down the day or the life that you've had and like what makes me truly happy and adding more of that into your day, and then saying no to the things that don't equate to arriving at how you want to feel and the things in your life that will enable you to feel that way. And I just love the vision board or the vision letter or whatever, that picture of Peggy's Cove that you had, because that's what a lot of professional athletes do. And that's the power of our mind. Once we like soak into the idea, like the image of something, the smell of the seawater or like the salt in the air when you'd be there, and like the moisture because it's so wet, like from all the waves crashing, and just having that as a single focal point. Like, I want to feel this way when I reach there. And what are the things that I can say yes to today that will help me get there? And what are the things I'm going to say no to? And like throughout my decade of helping people with EMDR, that's how I explain it to people. Our brain doesn't know the difference of whether it's actually experiencing it or whether it's visualizing it. The neural networks fire the same way. Right. And when you can harness that, anything is achievable, but you have to have that single focus and then just those little things every day that you build on that will, next thing you know, you're there.
Yes. Well said. I was going to just add to that as well too, is that everyone thinks that, especially I've been coaching for a while and it's become a lot more popular in those last few years, but that you have to, I need to change myself. Well, it's not about necessarily changing yourself. It's just bringing out the traits or the truer version of yourself, right? The best version that we've it's been said a lot, but that is true, because you're not trying to change to be someone else. You're just trying to follow along your journey, and everyone wants different things, and that's okay. And everyone's motivated a little differently. And the advantage of being a coach is having people come in and talk about the little voice in their head. One person comes in and says that, and I get to hear it, and it makes me feel a lot better that we're all normal, right? One person says they're insecure about finances, or they're if we're out for dinner, I always use the example of like, well, someone has something on their shirt and they don't want someone to see it, or someone else is worried about, well, this is what happened 2 weeks ago and I don't want them to bring up a sore subject, or someone's tighter for money, so they don't want, anyways, it just, everyone's kind of got their own thing. And I've heard people that say, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve it, all those kind of common fears, which are normal. But like you said, to kind of overcoming that, the question is better, like, what experiences do you want to have? I think a lot of times for coach, you think, okay, I want to earn a little bit more money and I want to lose a little bit more weight. Those are the two most common ones that I get. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't get you excited. And even having money in your bank account isn't excited. What gets you excited is the feeling associated with it. So it's like, okay, you're going to go try on, I don't know, new clothes, or have the feeling of feeling like more confident in your own skin, or going out somewhere and you feel like that glowingness, or you just have more energy in the day. Those are the things that are game changers for you. And when I make the question about the experience, what experiences do you want to have, is money is simply a tool. At least my belief is that money is simply a tool. It's how we're using it, right? What kind of services are products can we offer to other people, and then how comfortable it makes us. So when I ask the question about what experiences do you want to have, so this experience of doing something athletically, you can't buy that, right? You need to help support all of the time and the money that it takes to train and go to the gym and all those different things, or the travel to get there, et cetera. But you want the experience of living abroad for a while, or having a coffee in Europe somewhere on a patio, right? What does that kind of look like? What does it feel like? What does that smell like to you? And that's that's what I think is big with people, and really kind of works or sends it home when it's that more of that deeper feeling. When I don't know, I remember one story that when I was working at a hotel, we had the Queen come in and stay with us, and there was someone in the room that was doing a speech. I think it was for the Queen. Anyways, I came into their hotel room and they had all these pictures up on the side of the wall, and so he said, I need to get everything that's up here into this speech presentation. Okay. So how you mentioned about those neural networks and how to get things like around you that's in
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So what I did is I started a room full of quotes. It sounds like my energy room. That sounds weird, but I wanted to see all these things I wanted to have, all these different kind of words of wisdom from the people that I admire and I expect. I don't know how it was going to look, but for some reason, just one day I wrote a quote on the wall and I decided to write like in permanent marker. And then I ended up writing more of them. And every day I would see them all. I'd go to bed, see them all in there. It looks a little bit creepy, not going to lie. It looks a little bit, but I didn't keep that forever. But that was like a year of having that. And then you could paint over it, etc. Actually, let someone else paint over it because I didn't want to, but everything that I put up there was awesome. And it was an amazing feeling. And it really ingrained in my head. So I had that I'm not good enough. So telling myself that I'm more than good enough, I fly free, all those things in there, all the things that I wanted, all the different new habits, new approaches, that really worked well for me. And that's, and I've kind of passed that on between two other clients as well too.
Yeah. Like behind my computer here, I have, pictures of my family, my husband and I, like my loved ones, my master's convocation, like all these images of when I've accomplished things in my life and the people in my life that support me. And then pictures of the things that I eventually want to accomplish, the next thing. And I think it is important to keep those in mind so that like your coaching business is called Motivate, mv8.ca, right? Or your website anyway.
Yes.
And I remember Sean Acor, he's a positive psychologist and he does research about like, how do we stay motivated? And we may have a long-term goal that's like way down here, but we need things like short-term goals because that's how our brain works. We need those dopamine hits because life is hard and we all experience setbacks. And how do you get through them? Like we need to constantly fill the gas tank. And I guess like your patience, your focus, and all these little things that you do to scaffold and harness yourself to support you through those rough times lands you with all those medals behind you and the eternal torch on the wall. And you know what I mean?
Yes. And I think I totally agree. And I would always go every year would go as a sharpen the saw to go see, okay, who's the best in this industry. So the Bob Proctor, I took a year-long coaching program with him, Tony Robbins, I saw Eric Thomas, all these people they all brought a little bit of different analogies, little different things that helps myself and other coaches. Every book's a little different, everything's different. But the main thing is that, I don't know why maybe early on I thought, okay, if I'm happy now, then I'm gonna be happy forever. But how you mentioned being like everyone, doesn't matter who it is, goes through ups and downs. But the difference is when you go through those downs, it's not gonna last a week, 2 weeks longer. Now it's only going to last for a day or two, and you're acknowledging it. You're aware of kind of your triggers, if you will. And in NLP, neuro logistics programming, we talk about triggers. So if something's not going your way, is there a cycle? What happens? What's being said? What's being done? Kind of replaying that movie in your head and then changing the narrative around it. Okay, well, this always happens to me. This happens to me in whatever. Is it something I'm in control of? Is it yes or no? Can I affect it? Can I change it? So going back to that being like, well, only being down for a day, it happens to everyone and everyone gets overwhelmed or they get pushed back, but of being able to consistence and push it. And then what motivates you, right? So there's so many different things about refilling your tank. And then pandemic stuff hit, and we didn't talk about that, but I think everyone could agree how important this is what's great for the podcast, their mental, physical health, emotional health. And this is where we see how important it is for ourselves, connection with others. All of those things make a big difference.
Yeah. Did that, was that a valley for you? The last 2 years of the twilight zone of COVID?
Well, here's the thing. If you said I have run a company called Motivated and I'm not motivated, then I'm like, it definitely hit for sure. And just being able, the adaptability factor of it, people changing, some people affected a lot, quite drastically. And, I work in finance as well too. So some people, it really, I want to say benefited, or they were very busy. And then other people they were just struggling to make it. And it was a very divide, and it wasn't a fair divide. It wasn't anything going on. Right. So it definitely took a lot out of the tank for sure. And just getting back to, all of those races and everything I've done, they're all outside. So we go back to being like outside and with nature and with being around, that really helps. Even other people, there's energy for sure, whether you're an extrovert or introvert, but we need that connect. There's so much stuff that we need as well to kind of keep us going, right? And a refocus now too. And having something to look forward to. You mentioned that as well. It doesn't matter what it is, right? For me, it was planning trips, and the first couple of trips I planned, I had to cancel them. But now that we've got there, we've got a chance to travel a lot more, and it's been great. And it helped get through those times before, right?
Yes. And so, we've talked about breakups, building businesses, the valleys, and trying to refocus and where am I going now? What's on the table for you now? Where are you off to? I remember we talked about let's focus on where I'm at now and where I want to be. What's the next step, and forget about what's behind me and just keep going forward. So where are you off to?
Yes. Well, thanks for asking. So that I did the Cross Canada one, that was years ago. So then when I decided to, that was so great. When I turned 40, I said, I'm going to bike across Europe now. So a little change of it, but also honestly, the gym that I was at and I could see them kind of coming to an end point. I could see lots of signs in my life, if that makes sense. So once again, kind of following the gut feeling. So if I hadn't gone and done it then I would have been still sitting here being like, well, how did I make it work? So I'm going back to Europe for the first time since then. But yeah, I took a bike. Packed it all up and went over to, this was different because this was outside of Canada. I went to the farthest point in Europe, which was Turkey and Istanbul. I had never been there. I didn't know the language. I didn't know the people. And I landed with my goal of biking all the way through the Mediterranean coast to Spain. And that was similar to the Canada. I learned a lot along there, but different. The terrain is so much more up and down. There's so many other factors to go through. We didn't have Airbnb then. So back then when I was a lot of campgrounds in Canada. They don't have a lot of campgrounds there. They're tougher to find. And I had so much weight on my bike that my chain broke and my wheel was bent. So I had to adjust it to ship a bunch of stuff back home. And then really every day I would book Airbnb to the next place. So every day I woke up and didn't know where I was. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Wow. So, sometimes we need certainty in our lives and we need uncertainty. So that was another kind of adventure that I learned a lot from as well too. And that was involved in history, because there's so much history and you're like, wow, this stuff has been there for like 2,000 years and longer. And it just brings you back to what it would be like then and how far we've come and how much we have and how grateful we should be about, the things in our life and where we are and the opportunities, and that the lines on the map don't really exist, that we're all kind of connected as one. Right. Yes. So I really felt that and facing the fear and all those fears in my head about going overseas, I had created them all in my head. So I just had to face them. Right. So to answer your question, that was an amazing trip and I had friends at the end, and now I get a chance to go back to one of my favorite places, which was along Nice, along the coast, and Monaco, and actually getting to enjoy it with my girlfriend now, having someone to share the experiences. Things alone are great, but at the same time, being able to share that with friends and family, it's awesome. So I'm looking forward to that, and we'll see about the adventures, the biking and the running and that. Right now, it's just been about, okay, let's just get out and let's just get active, right? So a little bit every day, and that's been what it's been going on for me for now. And then we'll set new ones in June for sure, or in the summertime. I mean, yeah.
So Ryan, you've been through a lot in your life, and now your focus is on helping others do the same and finding that power from within them. So, these podcasts are to help others. So what are some of the gems that you might share with people who find themselves in those valleys and are looking for some motivation to get through it?
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for doing what you do. I think the main thing for people to know is if things aren't the best right now, that they will get better. That really at a low point. I really feel, especially this last kind of month or two, people are feeling overwhelmed. There are just so many different things are going on, that things will get better and that those negative feelings don't last. That's for sure.
Yes.
And really believe it. It sounds weird, but really believe in yourself. As I ask people, I'm like, do you believe in yourself? And when someone comes for a coach, maybe they've gone through something difficult, and that's a part of life and it's a part of journey. And, you'll figure out the why and why it happened and the lessons learned along, because of the, are there failures or there's lessons along the way. But yeah, that's all I can say is that, keep at it. And there's so much, having a support system around you, whether it's the family or the friends, there's accountability groups, there's different challenges that are going on. Those always work well with people as well, whether it's a fitness challenge or a reading or a water or a spiritual one or anything on there to kind of get yourself going. Once you're going, then things get easier, right? It's the times that are tough. So I just want to tell people to hang in there. We've all been there before. You've been through stuff before, so you can get through it. Most of the worries and the stress, the anxiety we put on ourselves, it doesn't really exist. We just, we make it worse than it is. So hang in there, and yeah, looking forward to if there's any way I can help at all, or helping with Julie. That's great that your journey with Julie continues and helping so many people.
Thank you, Ryan. I think that a lot of us, especially this time of year, it's May, it's raining. We're dealing with floods here in Manitoba. We had a long, hard winter with a lot of snow, and we've been navigating COVID. And like you said, like a lot of people are struggling. And so if there are people that are looking for motivation and how to refocus their life and find the capacity to take that first step and figure out like where they're going to work towards, then I would really encourage them to reach out to you. I know that I did several years back, right? And was able to find my focus, and here I am, right? And
For
so,
sure.
Your website is mv8.ca.
Correct. Yes.
And and so thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's great to be able to see and be a part of, like I said, a coach doesn't have all the answers as being a tool or a guide, if you will. And great to see all of your successes and more of just like that you're glowing with more of a purpose and helping other people. So that's refreshing and great to see, and keep on it. If you need anything, just let me know.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Journey with Julie. If you have a question, topic, or story that you'd love to share, I'd love to hear from you. Please visit my website and leave me a note. And I'll see you next Tuesday, where we'll hear more about how to shift your life from surviving to thriving.